Okay, so now g6 by Fischer, and he goes for the King's Indian setup. And you can see what's coming next. He's basically preparing to fianchetto to the dark square bishop. And after that, Tal develops his knight to c3, eyeing on the center, bishop to g7, and in the next move you can see he's going to castle, and after that e4. Tal opts for the center control, and you can see he's already eyeing that e5 push. So to stop this, d6 by Fischer. And after that, knight at b goes to d7, and you can see Fischer is preparing to reroute his knight to on c5, and after that, here simply bishop to g5 by Tal. He simply pins the knight, and obviously in the game no one wants to that annoying pin. So that's why here Fischer goes for h6. He simply attacks the bishop, and after that simply bishop to h4. And I know, and basically, yeah, so some of you might be thinking to push the pawn to g5, but guys, if this happens, Tal would just sacrifice the knight by knight takes g5. The idea is after h takes g5, bishop takes g5, and just look at this position carefully. I mean, just for 2 pawns for a piece, Tal is now building massive pressure, and now he has two passed pawn. I mean, he has 2 pawns which he can anytime launch to destroy the king side, supported by both the bishops and the queen. Okay, so in the actual game, after bishop to h4, Fischer goes for a6, and guys, apparently that's an inaccuracy. And basically here Fischer wants to expand on the queen side, but knight to d2. Tal simply brings the knight back to prepare for a kingside storm, and after that queen to e8, and finally Tal decides to castle. But guys, there is a variation. Instead of castling, here Tal could go for the move g4. And guys, this is the most aggressive line. And let's suppose if this game continues like knight to h7, so that he can stop this pawn push, but h3, solidifying the structure. And if bishop to f6, asking for bishop exchange, simply bishop takes f6, knight at d takes f6. And if queen to c2, preparing for queen to d3, so that he can include this queen in the kingside attack. But what about bishop to d7? Black can just focus on development. And if queen to d3, if black goes according to his plan, now comes b5. Queen to g3, b4, attacking the knight. But so that's why knight to c1, knight to d1. And if queen to e7, h4, c6, g5, attacking the knight, h takes g5, h takes g5, knight to e8. And yes, now we can consider queen to h4, but before that, knight to f3 might be the best option, guarding the g5 pawn as well as bringing more pieces into the game. And now black has to be careful. I mean, in this position, the best move for black is to push f5, so that he can basically counter the white attack. But let's suppose if he's not careful and he plays f6, but guys, that will be a mistake, because this pawn push weakens the g6 square, and white can now take advantage of this with rook to h6, attacking the weak g6 pawn. And if he defends by queen to f7, which looks good, but queen to h2, and after c takes d5, knight to e3, and if d4, knight to d5. And look carefully, I mean, by pushing these pawns, you can see black is weakening his own position, or we can say weakening key squares, and white can now take advantage of these weakness. And you can see there is a lot of pressure on black king side. And if black is not now not careful and he goes for something like rook to c8, and guys, now I just want you all to pause the video and just try to think, what will you play here as of white? And guys, the move is to sacrifice the rook with rook takes g6. The idea is, if queen takes g6, can you spot the next move? Yes, you are right. Knight to e7 check, and you can see what's coming next, which clearly makes this position winning for white. Okay, so in the actual game, after Tal castled, okay, so let me go back. So basically now knight to h7, and he basically wants to and yeah, he basically wants to place his bishop on f6 so that he can exchange this stuff, but it is bit slow, and Tal takes advantage of this by b4. He immediately strikes on the queen side. And after that, f3. And now just look at the structure. I mean, Tal is now pretty solid in the center. And finally, Fischer challenges the center. He pushed f5, putting some pressure on the e4 pawn. And since this bishop on h4 isn't doing too much, so Tal brings it back on f2. And let's see what will happen if black decides to capture on e4 instead by f takes e4. If this happens, then simply knight takes e4, knight takes e4. And now white can recapture with the pawn, but knight takes e4 is also fine, so that he can centralize the knight. And if black plays any move like knight to f6, if he tries to exchange the knight, but white can continue with the move c5, simply just creating more tension on the queen side. And if knight takes e4, simply f takes e4, d takes c5, b takes c5, and clearly you can see white is doing great here with with this massive passed c pawn and strong center. Okay, so let me go back to the move bishop to f2. Here Fischer goes for queen to e7. He basically just develops his queen, rook to c1, and Tal puts his rook on the c file. Maybe he wants to push the c pawn further. Okay, so knight to f6, creating some pressure over the e4 pawn, but Tal goes according to his plan. He focused on the move c5 which he played. Maybe he wants to open the c file for the rook. Okay, so now queen to c2 by Tal, supporting the f pawn as well as taking control over the c file. And let's suppose if black decides to capture on e4 by let's suppose f takes e4. Now comes knight at d takes e4. Knight takes e4, knight takes e4, knight takes d5, targeting the pawn, but simply c takes d6, c takes d6, rook at f goes to d1, attacking the knight as well as targeting the d6 pawn. And guys, I know some of you might be thinking about the move knight takes b4, but guys, this is actually a poisonous pawn. I mean, if black goes for this poisonous pawn, can you guess the next move which white can play in this position? And I think most of you got the move. Yes, you are right. The move is queen to b3 check. And you can see in the next move, black has to lose his knight. So that's why after queen to c2, here Fischer goes for knight to h5. Fischer simply improves his knight, and you can see its next destination will be on f4. And guys, now I have a question for you. How would you continue as of white? I mean, it's not so easy to find, because in this position there are too many good moves, but the move rook at f goes to e1 is recommended. Oh, sorry, let me go back. Yeah, so basically in this position the move rook at f goes to d1 is recommended, simply trying to activate the rook. And guys, we can say it's a type of a waiting move. The idea is, let's suppose if black goes according to his plan, like knight to f4, targeting the bishop, then simply bishop to f1. And if he goes for bishop to b5, and the idea is after knight takes b5, a takes b5, And now you can see black gets this open a file for the rook, which is not bad. But what about h4? Simply forcing the black pieces to move. Knight to h7, bishop takes b5, and if bishop to f6, if he puts pressure over the h4 pawn, simply c takes d6, c takes d6, queen to c7, asking for queen exchange. And if and let's suppose if rook takes a2, if black grabs our pawn, simply queen takes e7, bishop takes e7, rook to c7, and you can see white is slightly better here, putting pressure on the 7th rank. But in the actual game, so oh, sorry, let me go back. So here Tal goes for b5, and guys, that's a mistake because it gives black a chance to simplify the center. And without wasting any time, Fischer instantly, captures the e4 pawn. The idea is basically he just wants to simplify the position. And after knight takes e4, f takes e4, and now it's better to take on b5 so that he can open the a file. But I don't know why he goes for this move. And basically, here you can see he becomes too passive, and Tal now takes advantage of this by pushing the c pawn further. A powerful pawn push by Tal, simply targeting the bishop as well as breaking through. So, but before that, queen to g5. And basically, Fischer makes, a mating threat on g2. So, bishop to f3. Okay. And now he simply exchanges on c6, d takes c6, and guys, here Tal makes another inaccuracy. I mean, here the best move for white is to push h4, trying to kick this queen away from the king side. Sorry, because it's important. I mean, let's suppose if this game continues like knight to h3 check, if he takes benefit of this pinned g2 pawn, simply king to h2. Okay, and since this queen is attacked, so queen to e7, and guys, now d takes e6. And guys, I have a question for you: why he doesn't capture this knight? Yes, because of this threat. So I think you all know about this. Okay, so now d takes c6, knight takes f2, c takes d7, queen to h4 check, king to g1, knight to g4, bishop takes g4, queen takes g4. And now white can give a check, and after king to h7, rook takes f8, rook takes f8, rook to f1, asking for a rook exchange. And obviously black can't go for that because of the threat of promotion. So that's why queen takes d7. Okay, and if rook takes f8, bishop takes f8, b takes a6, and look at this passer. This single pawn is now going to be a disaster for black. Okay, so in the actual game, after d takes c6, yep. So here Fischer goes for bishop to g4. Fischer simply ignores the pawn and continues his attack. And he's basically wants to bring more pieces into the attack. And so now simply Tal takes on g4, queen takes g4, and you can see now this mating threat is again. So to stop this, simply bishop to e3, and you can see he opens the file for the queen so that he can defend. But a takes b5. Okay, so bishop takes f4, a good choice, simply eliminating the knight. And after e takes f4, knight takes b5, simply targeting the pawn on c7, rook to f7. He simply defends the c7 pawn. But guys, sorry, let me go back. Here the move f3 might be the best move. I mean, in the next move, you can see black is going to double his rook on f file so that he can increase the pressure over the white position. And let's suppose if rook to f2, the idea is same. If black doubles the, I mean, if black tries to double the rook, then white can also double the rook. So now king to h7. But what's the move? I mean, what's the idea behind this? The idea is rook to f7 with the same threat. So that's why, let's suppose if he takes on f3, simply rook takes f3, rook to g2. If he tries to attack the queen, but queen to f4. Okay, and if rook at c goes to g1, and you can see here black is creating massive pressure on the king side. Okay, so in the actual game, after rook to f7, here Tal goes for queen to c4, which is a good move, pinning the f7 rook so that in the next move he can capture this pawn on f7. And here the best defense of this would be king to f8, so that he can unpin the rook. But in the actual game, after queen to c4, rook to c8, and guys, that's a mistake because previously this rook was keeping an eye on the a file, but after moving the rook, you can see Tal, Tal can now comfortably start pushing his a pawn. But before that, he goes for rook to f3. The idea is so that he can, double the rook. Bishop to e5, and basically Fischer simply defends, or we can say adds an extra defense over the f4 pawn, but Tal just doubles the rook. And guys, now this is the point from where this game becomes interesting. So king to g7, a4, okay, and you can see Tal is creating some tension over the king side, as well as he's also on the other side he's trying to promote his pawn, which is a good option. So rook to f8, and Fischer simply knows this, so that's why he tries to stop. But king to h1, and Tal moves his king away from any future checks like this. So and guys, now queen to g5, and guys, that's an inaccuracy. But before that, let's see what's the best move. Here the best move is queen to h5, and basically the idea is to reroute this knight, because if the rook to h3 comes, then simply queen to g5. And you can see now he can maintain the pressure over the g2 pawn, and now this rook cannot go there due to this pawn. So that's a good strategy. But in the actual game, after queen to g5, Tal strikes at the f4 pawn with the move g3. And obviously, black cannot capture this pawn due to this threat of taking the rook. So that's why basically Fischer decides to just double the rook, which is the good option. G takes f4, and guys, now as you can see, since this bishop and queen is attacked, so what will you play? And I know most of us will like, bro, what's the issue? Simply just take on f4. And guys, that's a massive blunder. But telling the next move played by Tal, let's understand what's the better move. Okay, so let me go back. Instead, in this position, the best move is queen to g4, keeping the simply keeping the tension, because if he now takes, now black can simply takes this rook, and if rook takes h3, then simply queen takes with a check, and you can see this will be completely winning for black. But after bishop takes f4, now I just want you all to stop the move, and can you guess the next move played by Tal? In this position, he goes for this killer move, knight to d4, and you can see what he is preparing for. And the only move left for black is which we all can see is rook to e7. The idea is if rook to e6 check, then simply rook takes e6, queen takes e6, and despite of this, you can see white is just winning completely. But in the game, after knight to d4, here Fischer goes for queen to h4, and he basically tries to create a threat on h2. But guys, how should white continue the game here? Here the computer is recommending the move knight to e6 check, and then capturing this bishop. But guys, as we all know what kind of player Tal is, he's not just type of a person who plays quite Indian style chess, and he shows this. And in this position, Mikhail Tal sacrificed his rook with rook takes f4. And the idea is after rook takes f4, now comes, yes, you are right, knight to e6 check, forking the king and both rooks. And after king to h8, queen to d4 check, he doesn't grab the rook, and instead he focus on the bad positioning of the black king. So to defend this check, this is the only move. But knight takes f4, king to h7, e5, d takes e5, and in this position, the final move by Tal is queen to d7 check, and in this position, Bobby Fischer resigned. But why? The idea is after king to g8, now white can give some checks like queen takes c7 check, king to g8, queen to c8 check, and if king to h7, simply queen to d7 check, king to g8 c7, rook takes d4 c8 equal to queen, and after queen to d8, simply queen takes d8 check, rook to f8, and queen takes f8. And guys, that's a mate. What an amazing, magnificent game by Tal. Like this video, and I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.